Welcome back to our continuing series in the Gospel of Matthew. I thank you for viewing this video and I thank you for your support. Matthew chapter 18 and verse 29. We are going to be reading from the Good News Bible or today's English version. Matthew chapter 18 and verse 29. His fellow servant fell down and begged him, "Be patient with me and I will pay you back." When you look into a mirror, what do you see? Once we get beyond the obvious answer, you are still left with the question. So when you look in the mirror, what do you see? Now let us throw into that question a qualifier. What your parents are like has probably shaped you. Now, obviously there's exceptions to this. If you're adopted, your biological parents' influence is minimal. But the reality is that most of us, for better or for worse, for embarrassment or not, we are shaped by our parents. And to a degree, when we look in a mirror, we see our parents. And probably more precisely, when we look into the mirror, we will often see one parent in particular. Now, if you have any doubt about the truth of this matter, all you have to do is ask a brother or sister. And generally speaking, most brothers and sisters are quite willing to share in which way you very negatively reflect one of your parents. That's just the reality. Most of our siblings are not merciful when it comes to these type of things. Now, I'm not denying that we have probably been influenced by both parents. What I'm saying is that most of us tend to follow after one parent in particular. Now, this is not necessarily a good or bad thing, but we also recognize it can be a good thing, and at times it can be a very bad thing. The problem with our behavior is often it is a learned behavior. I'm not saying we are incapable of acting uniquely or spontaneously. Rather, I'm saying we have learned to respond to certain situations without thinking. And the reality is that for a lot of what we do in terms of behavior, we learned how to respond to certain situations from, guess what? Our parents, and maybe in particular one parent versus another, because often parents are not the same type of personality type. And if we become one set of or one type of personality, we tend to reflect that type of personality that our parent is. So if we are outgoing and our mother was outgoing, we probably tend to follow her. If our dad was reclusive and kind of a bit of a curmudgeon, and we are, reclusive, we probably have a bit of that in us also. So the fact is that being merciful is difficult because it requires us to do what? Well, on the one side, it requires us to unlearn behaviors. In other words, most of us are unmerciful because we have learned in various and sundry ways to be unmerciful. That is the way of the world. The way of the world is not to be forgiven, to offer up forgiveness or turn the other cheek. It is to be this. So we have to unlearn behaviors, but we also have to learn new behaviors. And kind of what I'm getting at here and bringing in our parents is that often what we are doing is when we go through life, we are not so much thinking through what we are doing, but we have established long ago patterns and responses to certain stimuli, which cause us to react in certain ways. Now, I'm not saying our parents were all bad or all good. I'm just saying the fact is we look much more like our parents than sometimes we want to. We understand that parents are human beings. They were not without flaws. They are like us in that way. And then you can look back, especially for those of you who I have parents that have since died, you can go back and project them into certain situations and certain circumstances and know how they will respond, certain key words, see certain key behaviors. You see, mercy is something that we have to learn. Look at the person who has forgiven a massive debt. He now encounters a person who is pleading with him for mercy. If people were completely logical, he would not have seen a problem. It would not have been a problem for him to be moved by the plight of that individual. Now, we realize that parables are not extensive treatises on one aspect of life. But I think Jesus here has captured the human dilemma well with this unmerciful servant. The servant is confronted by one seeking great mercy, and even though he's received great mercy, he has no ability to turn around and just take a smidgen of that mercy and grace he's received and extend it to this poor individual. The Christian life is not like a computer program. A computer can do lots of things, but it cannot do some of those things until a program is downloaded into the system. If you want to sit down and write at your computer, well, you're going to need a word processing program. Your computer, in that sense, does not just provide the opportunity to do it. You have to put in place the word processing program. And once you put the word processing program in, you can then write an essay, a book, a poem, whatever, as a result of it. Now, as long as you have that computer and until that computer dies, which we all sadly know eventually happens, you will be able to write with that computer. And I suspect that a lot of people kind of view the Christian life like that. I accepted Christ, download the Christian program in, I'm good to go. And as long as I'm here on earth, I have that Christian program in and I will do Christian things. No, the Christian life is not, most definitely not, like a computer program. What we have to do when we accept Christ is work at it. And mercy is one of those things we will have to work at. And you know how you learn mercy? You're put in situations where you are not treated nicely. You are put in situations where our reflex in learned is to fly off the handle. The point is learning to be merciful is hard because it's not natural, it's not ingrained, and there is no public domain program we can load up into our system and reboot the system and become merciful from here on in. Jesus calls us to be people of mercy, for this is the nature of the kingdom of God.